Chair Carrillo, you can take it away.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning. Actually, good afternoon. It's 12:03, Thursday, May 12th, 2022. And I'm calling to order the virtual meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. My name is Frankie Carrillo, and I am the chair of the commission. As we begin, Wendy Julian, our executive director, will explain how you can participate during this meeting. And then Wendy, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. Welcome, everyone. We encourage public participation in our meetings and welcome your comments in writing or live today. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item, and then again at the end of the meeting for items not on the agenda. If you would like to comment on an item on the agenda, Chair Carrillo will introduce the item, we'll hear a presentation if there is any, and then we'll take public comment before the commission discusses or takes action on the item. In order to make a live comment during the meeting, the easiest way is to register for the WebEx from the agenda. When you click the link, you can register for the meeting and type in the number of the item you want to comment on, and we will have your name already listed. But if you're already here and you want to speak on an item you didn't pre-register for, please click on the small hand icon. You can see it on your screen, and that's in the participant window. So you may have to click participant and then click on the hand. Once it's shaded in gray, that means it's raised. We can see your name and we'll call on you and unmute you during public comment on the item. If you have any questions or you can't find the raise your hand button, just send a chat to the host and Janae will be able to help you get connected. If you're calling in on the phone and would like to make public comment, you can just press *3 on your phone. That activates the raise hand feature, and we'll call on you with your phone number. To lower your hand again, once you've given your comment, you just dial *3 again. All commenters will have 2 minutes today unless the chair determines otherwise based on how many people are signed up and how much time we have. If you'd like to make your comment in writing, you can do so anytime by an email to us at info@poc.lacounty.gov. Please don't send your public comment in the chat. Only the host sees it, the commissioners don't see it, and it won't be logged as public comment because this function doesn't comport with our Brown Act responsibilities. If we get your written comment by 5 today, we will attach it to the general agenda, so it'll be available. Our commission meeting is being broadcast live on Facebook today. You can watch the meeting on Facebook Live, but there's no engagement with users. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at LA County POC so you get more information about our meetings. And also we're going to begin to be sharing a lot more information with our new community information officer on board. Please encourage others to attend. We also have now launched a YouTube account. Please subscribe to our channel. You can watch recaps and recordings of meetings and shortly significantly more content. Le damos la bienvenida a miembros de la comunidad quienes prefieren hacer sus comentarios públicos en español. Les daremos 4 minutos, 2 para su comentario y 2 para traducción. Nosotros podemos proveer traducción al inglés o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Al iniciar su comentario, nomás avísenos que prefiere hacer su comentario en español, por favor. So I think we will now go on to calling the roll. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves. Commissioner Dolores Canales. Commissioner Canales, can you hear me?
We may have to get her connected back to audio.
I will mark Commissioner Canales as present because I can see her, and hopefully we'll get her connected to audio. Commissioner Dupuy?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Here.
Commissioner Jackson?
I am here.
Commissioner Lewis is not joining us today, and Commissioner Meredith as well is out today, and Commissioner Nong is out today. Commissioner Yamashiro?
Present.
And Chair Carrillo.
Here.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. We have quorum, and I will pass it back to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Now we will move to proceed with the remaining agenda items for today. Item number 2 is your approval of April 14th and April 27th minutes. Do you have any written or live public comments on these items, Wendy?
We do not, right, Janae?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve April 14th and April 27th minutes?
So moved.
I second.
I second.
Moved by Commissioner Yamashiro, second by, I think I heard Garcia-Lays first. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds like all of us. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3 is to discuss and take appropriate action on progress that the probation department has made on ending the citation diversion program, including closing cases, lifting driver's license holds, and referring cases to the Division of Youth Diversion and Development, YDD. Here to update us on and with a brief presentation and to answer your questions, our probation deputy deputy director Felicia Cotton and Elizabeth Lopez from YDD. Ms. Cotton, will you deliver a verbal presentation?
And
Greetings.
Chair Carrillo, we're having trouble connecting with Felicia. It sounds like, Ms. Cotton, it sounds like maybe you have 2 speakers open. You want to try that again?
Greetings. Can you hear me now?
We can hear
Testing.
you, but there's an echo. I wonder if you have WebEx open twice possibly? Or Jennifer Wicks, do you have another idea what might be causing that echo?
Yeah, you're right on, Wendy. If you have anything else, Felicia, please turn the volume down completely besides the device that you're speaking to us directly through.
Let's try it one more time.
Good afternoon.
Great. Excellent. Please proceed.
Okay, great. So the document, hopefully all of you had an opportunity to receive the document that we have. The top part of the document represents just a background on what occurred that led us to this point. I want to make a couple of points before we get started into the update of current activity, and then I'm going to end with moving forward with what we plan to do as we move forward. The first being that we want to reaffirm our commitment to the closure of this program by ensuring that all of those holes and DMV processes are closed out and youth are appropriately notified. So we wanted to reaffirm that with the commission today. Also, although the program ended effective April 30th, there's a lot of residual work that will still need to continue over the next few months. And then I wanted to highlight the fact that DMV and their officials and their legal team have been great partners, thought partners, as well as implementing and trying new processes as we move forward. So let me get into current action, which you can follow me. We will start with bullet number 4, which is right beneath the bold blue line, which is probation stopped this intake back in February 2022, closing all eligible matters at that time, even though April 30th was our date to actually in the official hearing officer part of the program and the programming. So from there, we increased staffing. This is a temporary increase because we wanted to increase the number of cases that we were able to close. So we currently now have the full-time equivalent. Before we reported out 3, we now have the full-time equivalent of 7 staff that come over to assist us. And we're able to achieve that by flexing schedules and working differently and rotating staff in and out, training them so that we can, again, expedite the removal of the holds and suspensions with DMV. Also, each youth will receive written notification based on the addresses and information that we have. Currently, thus far, we've closed out 3,932 matters, of which 70% of those letters have gone out to, which is about 2,700. The remaining 1,100 are in progress. There's a data update in the middle of your document that shows you where we are with those closure of cases. We're still having 29,000 license holds that are pending. We have pending hearing another 5,400 and post-dispo pending another 84. So that gives you a breakout of where we are minus those that we have already handled. Also, we received 154 juvenile traffic infractions that we returned back to law enforcement to be filed at Superior Court. So those have been returned back. And let me get to the DMV update, which is the part that I think we might have a possible solution at least to speed up some of the closure of cases. So we've been piloting a lot of options with DMV as to how we might be able to get this done. We thought just going in the system and removing everything under the number associated with probation would be the best route. And we learned through their administrators and legal team that that is not possible because neither of our systems are able to really handle that full automated process. So we are now piloting a partial automated and partial manual process, meaning that we are pulling cases from our system, matching them with the DMV system, and hopefully we'll be able to do bulk removals at that point. We believe that this might be the most viable. I'll know more next week after we actually try the pilot, and DMV is very much in favor of this process as well. However, as a parallel process, bullet number 3, we are going to continue the manual process because we don't want to lose any momentum with the closures that we currently have. So if that partially automated process goes through, we'll at least be able to do over 100 to anywhere to several hundred at a time closures. And so we believe that that would then shore up staff time to be utilized with the notifications and sending out letters and updating our system to make sure that we have the correct addresses. So that's our DMV update. Now I'm going to move to our YDD update. When we were last here, March 10th, 2022, we had made 418 referrals as a result of this process. Since that time, as of May 11th, we've made another 625 referrals with a grand total of 1,043 referrals being made to YDD to date. We will continue to work with YDD and assist and help facilitate connections with law enforcement as they deem appropriate, as law enforcement makes contact with us or as YDD sees fit. We will continue our conversations and our collaborative process with YDD. And then lastly, moving forward, we are going to update or have update, I hear, right before I stepped in for this meeting, our website so that youth can call in if they need an update as to where we are in the process of disposing of their citation. Also, we'll use this website to be able to get address updates when youth call us, because we do understand that some of them may have moved, and we want them to have written notification that their matter has been disposed of. So that website is here, up as we speak, but we certainly will do more, ensure that the PD and some of our attorney groups have that access to that website so that they can encourage young people to call in and make sure that we have the correct addresses and to ask any questions that they might have. And again, we mentioned the DMV, that we will continue to pilot efforts. Hopefully this last pilot that we are running will get us where we need to be, but if not, we're committed to continuing experimenting with various ways to get this program shut down appropriately and youth notified. We will continue to leverage our resources to make sure that we have enough staff to get notifications out, and then certainly now to be able to answer phone calls as we anticipate. We probably will get a lot of phone calls from youth regarding the status of their citations. So we want to be ready for that. We are also working with the CEO's office regarding the resource transfer from CDP, that's the Citation Diversion Program, to YDD. So we will continue that process with the CEO's office. And again, as I stated, we will continue working with YDD and law enforcement to make sure that that referral process is solid with YDD and law enforcement for diversionary matters.
Thank you, Ms. Cotton. Ms. Lopez, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Elizabeth Lopez, Program Manager with YDD. So just a few updates and some details. We began receiving youth referrals from Probation Citation Diversion Program in late 2021 for informal diversion services. Referrals are received and assigned to YDD providers, and the YDD provider will then follow up with the referral, conducting initial contact and outreach within 72 hours of receipt of that referral. YDD has received, like Ms. Cotton mentioned, 1,043 referrals from Probation Citation Diversion Program, and we continue to coordinate and receive updates from Probation on the submission and receipt of referrals, tracking, as well as the types of citations that are sent over. So some of those include curfew, truancy, gambling, possession of tobacco. We're also seeing unlawful fighting, battery on school campus. And like Ms. Cotton mentioned, we will continue to coordinate with Probation and also law enforcement agencies to include YDD in meeting to discuss the transition of Probation Citation Diversion Program, and also any details and support that is necessary for law enforcement agencies to be able to move forward with submitting referrals directly to YDD. That sometimes includes some additional support to ensure that there's clear pathways and access to our referral submission system. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Thank you both for that, those great reports. Wendy, do we have any written or live public comments for this item?
We do. Thank you. There are a couple of things attached to the agenda that are helpful that I encourage people to take a look at. And we will start public comment. And we have 2 pre-registered. And also, if you'd like to speak, please click on the raise your hand button and we'll call on you. You'll have 2 minutes. We're going to start with Ryandel Bourne. And I'm going to make sure we can. Ryandel Bourne, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin.
Yes, I'm driving, and I don't know if I'm on topic, but I'm just calling in support of item 5, moving secure track youth from the compound to Kilpatrick. I noticed that DJJ stopped accepting young people adjudicated of more serious offenses last July, and LA needed to come up with a plan for the newly termed secure track youth. The board has now named Kilpatrick on 2 separate locations as a secure track facility. However, young people with secure track depositions, I'm sorry, I'm driving, are still trapped in the compound.
So, Bourne, excuse me for interrupting you, but we're actually on agenda item number 3. Item number 5 will be in about maybe, I hope, about 30 minutes. So if you can call back for that item number, we would hear your comments when it comes to this issue. Wendy, can you call the next speaker?
Yes. Our next speaker is Sarah Clifton. Sarah, go ahead and try and speak and I'll let you know if we can hear you.
You hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Sarah Clifton, the Transition Age Youth Program Manager at the Alliance for Children's Rights. Thank you to the Commission, the LA Superior Court, the Probation Department, and the Division of Youth Diversion and Development for your efforts thus far. We are moving in the right direction, but there is still a great deal of work to be done and several unknowns that persist. We need an immediate plan to expeditiously remove the nearly 30,000 remaining DMV holds. Additionally, continuing to refer non-traffic related citations to probation is a step backwards and is contrary to Youth Justice Reimagined. The clerk of the Superior Court needs to send another letter to the Chief of Police formally correcting this mistake in writing so it is clear to law enforcement that citation should no longer be referred to probation. Those citations should instead be directly referred to YDD for diversion services, and CDP's funding should be reallocated from probation to YDD so they have the necessary resources to dispose of the remaining citations and run a successful diversion program going forward. With respect to minor offenses, law enforcement should be further encouraged to use their discretion to issue warnings and release youth rather than issuing citations from the outset and over-policing LA County youth. We need increased communication and transparency all around in this area. The Commission needs to request that probation provide a list of the names and citation numbers of youth whose cases were dismissed to the Alliance for Children's Rights, Public Counsel, and the Public Defender's Office so that they can ensure their clients' tickets were dismissed and driver's license privileges have been fully restored. I think it would also be helpful to provide a list like that to the Children's Law Center. They also need to continue to follow up with probation to make certain that youth and families are properly notified of all of these updates and changes. Having dismissals and holds removed is great, but the youth need to know that it's happening. YDD and this commission need to take a leadership role in supporting a successful transition to YDD to create a much brighter and fairer future for our youth. I'm really happy to hear the updates from Felicia Cotton and YDD this morning, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and I hope that we can keep moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Leah Zeidler-Odas. Leah, you can begin.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Leah Zeidler-Odas from UCLA Law's Criminal Justice Program. I appreciate the updates that are given today at the meeting, but it's still raising a lot of concerns for me, particularly because I continue to represent young people who have had outstanding tickets with citation diversion. And even though I'm no longer having hearings, when I was having hearings, which was back in February, I did have 2 clients reach back out to me in the last month who let me know that even though I was told their cases were dismissed by the citation diversion program, that their license had not yet been reinstated and they had gone to the DMV. And so it's raising a lot of concerns for me about accountability and how many other youth who are not represented by counsel are having similar issues. Another question that has been coming up for me throughout this process is if CDP is officially ended as of April 30th, who should the Public Defender's Office, the Alliance for Children's Rights, CLC, and other attorneys who still have clients with suspended licenses contact now if we need help with client matters? We really need more accountability especially in the advocate community, and particularly the Public Defender's Office, who represents many youth who, might have a offense that has been filed in the juvenile court, but these kids have their licenses suspended as well through citation diversion program. The PD's office really needs like a list of every single youth who has a ticket with the citation diversion program so that they can reach out to probation and get that hold removed for their client. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Melinda Kakani. Millie, you can begin.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, this is Melinda Kakani with the Children's Defense Fund and the Los Angeles Youth Uprising Coalition. I just want to reiterate that, 30,000 kind of unhandled tickets is not a small number. And what that means for young people is that then when they go to seek their license, there is a hold on their license. And when there's nothing to do about that, that means that they're driving without a license. And if, more likely when, they're pulled over, that can result in a misdemeanor. That can result in the cycling through a system that we know only causes harm to young people. And so while I appreciate probation's effort, the fact that there is no process by which young people can then follow up, by which their families can follow up, by which advocates can follow up, really feels like there is a lot missing to this process. It seems like probation is getting a pass because they have simply committed to ending this program. And so I'm just encouraging the Probation Oversight Commission to do more to ensure that young people have a place that they can go to, a person that they can call when at the age of 19, they're trying to resolve a ticket that they received when they were 12, because that's what many of us have dealt with in representing clients. At the age of 21, 19, 20, whatever it is, all of a sudden you're informed that there is a citation outstanding from when you were in middle school related to vandalism, riding your bike without a helmet, graffiti, whatever it is, possessing drug paraphernalia on campus. And there is literally no meaningful way to resolve this given the closure of CDP. So just want to encourage the entity that can to create some sort of oversight over how young people are not further harmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. That's the end of our public comment.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, speakers. Commissioners, I'm looking over at the participant bracket here. If you have any questions, please indicate that by raising your hand. I see Commissioner Dupuy, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Chair Carrillo, and for the presentation. I had a question, maybe I missed this about the citation diversion, but I hear that a lot of the cases were dismissed, but then it's like the cross to the DMV holds that's missing. Can probation can they release the DMV holds, or does it have to be done by the DMV?
Janae, are we able to get Felicia back to answer that
Can you hear
question?
me?
Yes, go right ahead.
When we say dismissal, we do mean that on your chart here, the cases that are dismissed that have the DMV holds, we actually connected with DMV, and DMV is the entity that would release the holds. So everything that we indicate here as closed or holds removed, we went through DMV and they released the holds. So that is the process that we're working on, an automated piece to more expeditiously be able to handle these. Some of the calls that we are receiving, we're finding that, and I meant to mention this in my opening, some law enforcement agencies filed their juvenile tickets with Superior Court always. They never brought them over to the Van Nuys Court. So some of the calls that we are receiving regarding citations are not aligned with the Van Nuys Court, with the citation diversion program. So we would be only lifting those matters that are associated and aligned with the citation diversion program. And the youth with citations that are in adult court would then need to go to adult court to get those addressed. But yes, DMV, to your question, is the entity that would lift the hold.
So thank you for that. So when you correspond with them, can you tell that they've lifted the hold, or are they just saying like, yes, we're going to do it? Is there a way for you to actually see it?
We actually see it, and we can see it in the system.
Okay.
I believe that it's listed.
Okay.
And that is what generates the letter. Once we get notification from DMV that the hold's been lifted, then that is when we send the letter out to the young person.
Okay. I'm wondering how it's happening then that the case is dismissed, but the hold hasn't been lifted. Does anyone, because I heard that as a comment, did I hear that correctly? And if so, does anyone know how that might happen?
Yeah, what we need to do is probably find out what cases those are, because when we've gotten those calls and followed them all the way through, that has not been the case. We have not had a case where we, to my knowledge, and I checked before this presentation, where DMV has indicated that a hold was lifted and it was not. Again, I think there is some confusion that some believe that all juvenile citations were a part of this citation diversion program, and they were not. Some law enforcement agencies always took their juvenile matters to Superior Court. And so we do get calls where they're asking us to seek a DMV release for matters that are not associated with the citation diversion program.
Okay.
That could be creating some confusion.
Okay, that makes sense. So, but now I'm hearing is you have a number that people can call to follow up for the young person if they need to. So there is a point person. Is there, maybe we can take down that information or give it right now for those who are listening, and then send it out in the meeting minutes afterwards for people to know, or specifically folks and representatives who are on this call to know what the contact number is for that. And then also I want to offer for those who called in and said they did have young people whose cases had been dismissed, but the hold hasn't been released. I mean, if I want to help figure this out, if it's for the Superior Court or the Van Nuys Court, Ms. Cotton, you said you'd be interested to know which cases those are to just double check your system. Can we work together on that?
Absolutely. We would be more than happy to. Any of those kind of matters we'd like to know about.
Okay, great. So I encourage whoever called in and mentioned that about their clients, feel free to reach out to me and I can facilitate that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes, so your hand was up.
I lowered it. Commissioner Dupuy said everything and asked all the questions I'd planned to.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners have any questions on this matter?
I guess I would just be curious to know, and thank you for the presentation. I'd be curious to know what kind of outreach was done to notify probationers that the program was ending. I heard a commenter mention the same thing, and so would love to hear from Ms. Cotton on that.
So I think moving forward, the outreach that we are going to be heavily engaged in is, again, through our public-facing website. The only other outreach that we've done is as tickets are dismissed, we are sending notification to the young person that those matters have been dismissed and the holds have been removed on those where those are appropriate. We also had youth that were in progress. We did some outreach to those young people to let them know that the program was closing, and so that's a very small number that you see. I think it's another 84 that we're in progress of reaching out to let them know, to offer them the option of continuing via YDD. If they're very close to completing, then we're just closing them out based on the program closure as of the 30th, but giving them option for services as well. So it's been no massive outreach. This will be the first major outreach via the public-facing website, and then working with some of our attorney groups, such as Public Defender. I'm going to reach out to them to make sure that they have the number to this website as well.
Wendy, did you want to respond to Ms. Cotton?
I wanted to just say that I will work with Ms. Cotton to get the link to the website when it's ready, the phone number when it's ready, and send it out with our recap of this meeting, which we've got about 12,000 people now on our mailing list. So we'll work together to get that information out.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Commissioners. I don't see any other hands, but I got a question for you, Ms. Cotton. Well, first I want to applaud you for getting all this done. It seems like we're moving forward on this issue that's been coming up every few months, and so I applaud you for that. But I don't want to end the conversation and not talk to you about or ask you some questions about teen court. Also, Mrs. Lopez is still around. I would like to hear her input. I know from work that I do that the teen court is also part of the diversion program, but I know we're talking about driver's license and other matters, but can you give me some insight about where that's at? Is that going to be shut down as well? Who's involved in that, and anything else you want to share about that? So that is a separate operation, and those youth have actually been arrested and have an arrest petition, a 602 arrest petition before the court. I can come back and bring you more information, because many of those teen courts are not functional. It's only a few that are, like one in Long Beach, I think, continues to be functional. And we can come back and make a presentation at a later date, but it is separate and aside from a citation where youth have not been arrested. They've just been cited. No information entered into a judicial record system. Okay, that's helpful. And we would definitely set that up so we can come back and get more information on that. Because we're talking about diversion, what's sort of diversion from, you get arrested, but you don't go to juvenile hall. The school, the high schools, these teen courts sort of hear these cases with an actual judge, and the outcome is a little bit different than actually going into the juvenile hall. Is that correct? Yes, the outcome, it's a non-detained petition, so all of these youth have not been detained. It's a dispositional option for an investigator who's looking at a case to give that youth the benefit of going through a teen court, like you said, with a judge or commissioner, and then a jury of his or her peers hear the matter, and then they make recommendations to the court, and then we follow up with the young person. That group follows up with the young person, I think, every 3 to 6 months, and I have to get the details of that. And then from there, whatever they decide, whether it be community service, whether the kid is to engage in a writing program, or whatever that body decides, then they
kind of not only encourage the youth, but then check in to see if they're actually following through with what the teen court has ordered. And then once that's completed, that matter is closed, and most of those cases are available for record sealing. So records are sealed after they complete that matter.
Okay, thank you. I wish there was more of those courts that were open, not just the one in Long Beach. And there's one in East LA that's open as well. But Ms. Lopez, if you're still here, do you want to chime in on this topic about teen courts?
Sure. So from my understanding, YDD, we don't work with teen court. We primarily receive and have partnerships with law enforcement agencies to receive eligible pre-arrest referrals. So in lieu of arrest, we do receive some post-arrest, and we also work with the DA's office on, they submit pre-filing diversion referrals over to YDD. I can share more details about outcomes that are actually available on our quarterly dashboard, which are on our website. We are about to release, I believe, Q1 data, but also happy to share any additional information that might be helpful here for you all in the future.
Okay, so we'll table this for the future then. Thank you, ladies, so much. Commissioners, great questions. And we'll be moving on unless someone else has another question, but it doesn't look like it. So moving on to item number 4. We will discuss and take appropriate action on updates from the LA County Probation Department on probation's plan to move youth back to Central Juvenile Hall. Before I hand it over to Chief Fletcher, I want to let the public know that 2 commissioners and 3 POC staff members conducted a pre-inspection at Central on April 20th, 2022, to see firsthand the work that is being completed and to check on some of the issues that the POC mentioned in our last inspection, which was last year. We were glad to see much of the work in progress and noted some significant improvements. The basic findings of that inspection have been shared with the commissioners and with probation leadership, and we will be publishing them publicly and sharing them with the Board of Supervisors soon. Since the inspection, we have received a number of updates on the constructions and that show work and that is still continuing. We are looking forward today to hearing about a timeline for completing the work. In particular, the work in the common areas that youth need access to, and work in some of the buildings with the most significant issues. For example, girls' care and boys receiving, before youth are to return to those buildings. The probation department has been forthcoming over the past weeks and has been actively discussing the plans to return to Central with partners, unlike during the last move. That we appreciate that improvement. Chief Deputy Fletcher, the floor is yours, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. Appreciate the opportunity. Hello, commissioners. Just as an update, as you recall, on March 12th and 13th, we moved approximately 135 youth from Central Juvenile Hall to Barry J. Nydorf Juvenile Hall for the 90-day temporary suspension of operations at Central. So during this last 60 days, significant repairs have been made to the facility at Central. As indicated by Chair Carrillo, some of the commissioners have noted some of those repairs that include work with plaster, plumbing, cement work, flooring, repairs and replacement of doors in the living units, windows that have been damaged, scratched with graffiti, the HVAC system, and a lot of the paint. So the facility, although it is 110 years old, we've made some significant improvements for the basic facelift to get our youth back to Central. So we are now at 60 days since we did that temporary closure for 90 days. And we are prepared at this point to move some of our youth back to the facility. So as I indicated, we started out by moving 135 of our youth. And at this point in time, we have approximately 96 youth who would move back to Central. And that has to do with some of our youth being released from custody and others moving on to camp facilities or placement. So we're working with the current population of 96. We plan a very phased approach for the return. As Chair Carrillo mentioned, we have worked very closely with Juvenile Court Health Services, Department of Mental Health, and LACO on a plan to make the return as seamless and successful as possible. So I was able to share the plan with Ms. Julian and Ms. Reynoso earlier this week, and explained the approach is to look at the movement of youth in 4 different phases. So what we are trying to do is to balance with Department of Mental Health, our partners on site at Barry J, to really assess the population. So we know that we have a handful of units, 4 but in particular, that are still under construction, that we will not move youth back into until those needed repairs are made. And those units include boys receiving, girls care, GH, and EF. So as you may recall, in the last storm that we had, there was a leak in GH and EF, and so some repairs are being made to those units. But we are able to move youth back into the other units. So in this phase plan, in our first phase, we'll move approximately 29 youth. In phase 2, the plan is to move our DD youth, our developmentally delayed youth, and that is currently a group of 12. And then we'll move the next group of 27 and the next group of 28. But really all of this is contingent upon the assessment that we do with those units. So we want to prepare our kids for the movement and to make sure that mental health is weighing in on the tenor of those units before we make those moves, so that it is stabilizing for the youth and also all of the partners that are involved in the movement. The dates and times are going to be determined and finalized next week. We will start the movement next week. And then based on how smooth that goes, we will plan out in segments of how frequently those phases are going to move. So this time we do have complete control over the process. So we're grateful for that and grateful for the partnerships that we have with mental health and juvenile court health services and LACO to make this seamless. We are inviting ARC to be present on site to help us in preparing the youth for the move. We also are having an interagency meeting early next week so that we make sure that all of the partners and probation management is all on the same page. We will be notifying families of the move as well as the attorneys that represent our youth and all of the partners about what specific moves will be made on which days and at which times. What we want to do is to avoid any interruption to school or any interruption to visiting on the weekends. And so we would like to make these movements during the week. But again, those specific dates and times will be determined. You know, our partner agencies really have been at the table with us in planning this out. So we feel very confident that our youth will be prepared. And as we move them back, have folks on site that can support that. And then even as a more global approach, we have BSCC subject matter experts that work in our institutions that are going to be present as we transfer back to Central to make sure that we are within regulation of everything that we're doing. Programming, school attendance, recreation, visiting, all of that. So we want that transition to be as smooth as possible. And as we continue to work with the BSCC on inspection plans. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about how we got to this process and who was involved in the process. Thank you, Chair Carrillo.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Fletcher. Wendy, do we have any written or live public comments for this item?
Chair Carrillo, we do not have any pre-registered comments. I believe there are, Janae, correct, a couple of written comments that will be attached to the agenda. And again, if you'd like to send in your written comment, you could send it to info@poc.lacounty.gov and we'll get it attached. And if you'd like to make public comment now, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand function. We'll put up the timer and start with Millie Kakani. Give me a second, Millie, though, before you get started here. Okay, you can unmute Millie and you're good to go.
Hi, this is Melinda Kakani again with Children's Defense Fund California. While I appreciate the efforts to bring young people back to Central, what's not being named is what probation is doing to be held accountable for the outrageous amount of harm and essentially abuse that they cause to young people by this wildly poorly planned closure of Central Juvenile Hall, poorly planned transition of young people to Barry J, all in an attempt to avoid backlash by political entities and perhaps media. I'm not really sure. And so, what is being done to account for the harm that comes from excessive room confinement, the harm that comes from increased use in OC spray, the harm that comes from inability to see your family for essentially 5 weeks, the harm that comes from a decrease in programming, a decrease in recreation time and fresh air. And so I'm not hearing any acknowledgement of that or any accountability related to that. How many young people are now facing additional charges and allegations and violations because of this poorly planned transition? And how is probation being held accountable for that? How many young people are now facing additional 707B offenses and potentially secure track dispositions because, again, of their reaction to the harm inflicted upon them by probation? So I do hope that the Probation Oversight Commission kind of creates some transparency around that and ensures that these young people are being treated with some semblance of dignity and humanity, because that seems to have been lost in the course of these last couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. I'll give it just another second if anyone else would like to comment. And if not, we'll move back to you, Chair Carrillo. Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Commissioners, I'm looking over at this bracket here. I see one hand, two hands. Commissioner Garcia-Lays, you're up.
Thank you. I do have a question, which is, so the phased approach sounds good. It's what I was hoping for. You didn't mention at all what staff are going to be moved and part of which units, whether or not there has been any attempt, to use this as an opportunity to change the culture amongst the staff. Before all this happened, Central's uses of pepper spray numbers were higher than the numbers at Barry J. Nydorf and hadn't been coming down as quickly. So I want to see what thought has gone into it and what's possible in terms of putting maybe some of our best staff right at the beginning to establish a new culture at Central.
So thank you, Commissioner. That's a great point, and we have had those conversations. As many of the commissioners have heard in prior POC meetings, we have struggled with our staffing levels, and we have some amazing staff who do amazing work with these young people, and we want to make sure that staff are assigned appropriately. I think one of the things that we hear often from the youth that we serve, especially in this transition from Central to Barry J, is that these kids want to be with the staff that they had at Central. So we are looking at this whole transition as a reset, right? We want staff to make sure they understand policies and procedures and best practices, what's required by the settlement agreement with the DOJ, what's required by BSCC regulations. We've done a lot of that training already. We are in the process of making sure and reiterating it is happening currently, but we want to make sure it happens in the transition and continues at Central, is that our directors and our supervisors are on site in units interacting with the staff who might not be as experienced as some others, who are receiving that feedback around what is best practice and how we should be engaging with our youth, and having that continual mentoring and coaching happening on a real-time basis. So we all know that we've made some significant changes in our leadership in the institutions. I think folks are coming through with a renewed sense of what is possible for the youth in our care and what our responsibilities are in terms of the service delivery model. You know, every single youth that we serve should have a positive impact in terms of the services that we provide, and we are working toward that goal. But the training piece is very important. So we are, with the support of our directors and supervisors and the leadership, as well as our BSCC subject matter experts, we are trying to infuse all of that and to keep it going and maintain that sustainability over time to make sure we are doing what's right by the youth in our care.
So you did mention that the young people wanted the same staff that they had before. So most of what you talked about in terms was about what supervisors are going to do and changes in that. But it sounds like it's actually going to be the same staff that were there before are going to get moved back along with the same units, so that there isn't actually anything that's being done in terms of choosing what staff are going back to potentially change the culture. Or, and again, I mean, I was just looking at the numbers this morning. There's been an over 500% increase in total incidents of pepper spray compared to, last June. So, the people who are fastest to use the pepper spray are going to be sent back to East Lake, is what I'm hearing.
Well, we have to work with the staff that we have, right? So training is a key element of that. We want to empower staff to be the best that they can be when they're returning, and as well as the staff that are staying at Barry J. So we do have considerable staffing issues, right? So it is incumbent and our responsibility to make sure that our staff receive the appropriate training to be effective in the units. So many of our staff are outstanding. Like any organization, we have staff that need assistance in redirecting and making sure that they are providing the service that we are responsible to provide. And so that training is happening. We are addressing, there's the OC phase out process as well. And so we are addressing all of those things through training, but we are working with the staff that we have. And if staff are not in line with policies and procedures and laws, then they are being dealt with through an internal affairs process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dupuy, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. I am actually very curious about the question that one of the caller, I think Millie Kakani, raised about how many young people have received additional charges since the move. Do you have a sense of that number?
You know what, I can get it for you. I don't think that it is a significant number. Certainly with regard to new charges, I don't believe that we have had any youth that have been charged with new criminal offenses since the move with our kids at the juvenile hall facilities. I do know some information has been presented to the court where it has been a severe destruction of county property or an assault on an officer where it has been filed as a violation. And that is information that gets submitted to the court and oftentimes ends up as a violation. But I can get you the exact number. It's not a huge number, but there have been some.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, in terms of the phasing, do you know what stage the girls will be transferred back to Central?
They will be in the first phase.
First phase, that's great to hear. So I know you said you'll have ARC there as part of a partnership, but I'm wondering if you have any similar organizations tapped to assist with the girls in particular, or if ARC was also planning to facilitate with the girls.
Right, so I'm hoping to have a conversation with Mr. Lewis about what his team can provide. I just had a great conversation with the Young Women's Freedom Center, who certainly I have partnered with in other counties, and so they are more than willing to assist us. And so that would be a huge plus, I think.
That is so great to hear. If there's any way that I can facilitate the Young Women's Freedom Center being able to, kind of help with that transition, specifically talking to and mentoring the girls there, I think that would be excellent. And so I would love to follow up with you on how that's going after this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jackson?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. So thank you, Ms. Fletcher, for your presentation. I will say that I was one of the commissioners who did one of the pre-inspection visits, and I was happy with some of the physical updates that I was seeing. I did hear you just mention that relocation back to Central is going to be contingent on some assessments of the units, and I wanted to know who's participating in those assessments and what exactly is being assessed. The commission hadn't seen the plan yet.
Right, so it's really about the assessment of the youth. We want to make sure that they are thoroughly prepared. And so Department of Mental Health is going to partner with probation to go in and start to prep the kids for the transfer. And so when I'm talking about that assessment, we've already done the physical assessment and we're continuing to do that on site even today, and will right up until the moment that we are moving. But it really is about the assessment of the youth to make sure they're ready to go.
Okay, I thought I heard unit, so I appreciate that clarity because that's actually the more important facet of it. So.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jackson. Any other commissioners want to chime in? Speaking of chiming in, I'm at my son's elementary school, so that in the background I have no control over.
Well, I have a second question.
Please.
Ms. Fletcher, do you know when we can review the plan? I know that it's in the works, but the sooner we know, perhaps the better.
I think as soon as we finalize the dates and we are notifying the partners to make sure, we can certainly make sure that I send that to Ms. Julian so that she knows which units are going on which days. We're trying to be fairly strategic because of the safety and security to make sure that kids actually get there and they're not interrupted by any problems along the way with outsiders. And so we want to be cognizant of that when we're making the notifications. But I'd be happy to stay in touch with Miss Julian to let her know what's going on.
Okay. Well, the pavements, the walkways that they were working on, that was during my visit a couple of weeks ago. Will that stuff be corrected before the youth return, or will there be some sort of detours of the facility so they can safely enter the units?
No, in fact, I just got an update that cement work will be finished.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Fletcher.
Wendy, I see your hand up.
Sure. I thought I would just thank the department for the chart that we have received that's attached to the agenda that actually shows the work orders. Is very helpful on the inspection that we did. And then we received an update recently, just a matter of days ago. I would expect that I speak on behalf of the commissioners that we'd like to receive the additional updates to that between now and our next meeting. Having been there, it's nice to be able to follow through on those improvements, like the concrete, for example, if that's acceptable, Chief Fletcher.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Wendy. Chief Fletcher, I have one question. I was also there during the pre-inspection, but I know there's new leadership there. Mr. Nieto was replaced. And, as you know, one of our things here is about cultural change, and the question was about staff and, input about what if staff wanted to be there or which staff were going to be positioned at Central Juvenile when it reopens. But is there anything you can share about the new leadership there? Exciting or not? Would love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mr. Baima is the new superintendent that replaced Mr. Nieto. He's coming in with a great deal of experience and really kind of the fresh eyes on institutions. So that has been amazing. We have retained one director at Central, and she will return with the group. But all the others are coming in as not necessarily brand new directors, but directors who have been moved from other places. and then a handful of the new ones. And so they are very eagerly awaiting the return. They have done a great job while they've been at Barry J, really just immersing themselves in the operation of juvenile hall facilities and making sure that the youth and the operation for Central is stabilized. And so I think what you will see and hear moving forward is that we have a management team who is very hands-on in the units. They want to be part of the organization. They're happy to be there. They are really committed to making sure what we're doing for the youth is appropriate, fair, and effective. And so I think you'll see a vast difference in how we approach programming, for example, right? That is the huge issue that we are all concerned about. And they are moving forward with some great ideas about what we could do differently there for those kids and their families. So I think you'll see a whole different place, and it's really just comes from a spot of, just fresh eyes. People get, worn out being in a 24/7 operation year after year. And so giving them a break and bringing in new folks, I think is really helpful.
Chief Deputy Fletcher, thank you so much. I'm sorry, one more question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do have a follow-up question. Thank you, Frankie. Ms. Fletcher, I was wondering, I know there's been leadership changes and there's been training and things like that. And there was also a survey that was recently conducted. Did you guys check in, survey the concerns, needs of line staff and how they feel about us going back to Central?
So I think staff are very eager. So as you know, we've struggled with our staffing levels. And so I think the switch from Central to Barry J certainly is a distance issue for a lot of our staff. So staff definitely want to return to their home place at Central. So they are eager to get back. And as I said earlier, the kids who were with us during that transition are eager to get back as well. They like that facility better. They like being in their own environment that they're used to. So I think we will see an improvement overall in less call outs by staff as we return back to a more normal situation.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's a real improvement in morale when you guys return and you guys are measuring that in some way so that things change.
Right, and the survey, I think it's actually still open, and we're going to look at all of those results and address some of those issues. We've also started focus groups for our Detention Services Bureau to meet with me personally, and Ms. Reynoso is also involved, as well as Albert Banuelos, who has a great deal of experience in probation, to really just hear them. What works for you? What do you think the kids want? What do you think you can deliver? How can we do business differently? And so we're looking forward to getting more feedback directly from the line staff, in addition to what we'll find out in the survey.
Really happy to hear about those collaborative efforts. Thanks.
Okay, once again, thank you so much. We'll be moving on now to item number 5. Item number 5 is for us to discuss and take appropriate action on progress the Los Angeles County Probation Department has made moving youth disposition to the secure track to Campus Kilpatrick and Camp Joseph Scott. At our last meeting and in our public meeting, probation leadership discussed a plan to move at least a small number of young men who are already dispositioned to the secure track at Campus Kilpatrick by the first week of May. That move did not obviously happen, to my disappointment and to the disappointment of many others, most important to the young men in the compound at Barry J, who are hoping to be transferred. Probation has informed us about some of the reasons for the delay and has been in conversations with labor over the past week. Mr. Bettino, do you have any updates for us on the move to Kilpatrick and the status of the upgrades and construction at Campus Scott as we prepare for the return of youth from DJJ in the summer of 2023?
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chair Carrillo. Just by way of update, and then I'll step aside and take whatever questions folks have. So as you did mention, we are engaged with labor, continuing to work towards a resolution to move forward as quickly as possible with this move. Because labor negotiations are considered confidential, we can't really share any specifics while these negotiations are ongoing. We met last week. We have a meeting scheduled for next week. We're pushing forward as quickly as we can, but because we're in this sort of formal space, we will not be able to share and discuss publicly. So there are, as of today's count, and I haven't seen lately, we have 37 young men who've been ordered to secure youth track. Because that name certainly does not roll off anyone's tongue, nor is it especially strength-based. The team is working on rebranding and renaming the program. So we've actually been engaging young people and have a few finalists. We've been talking to staff as well about renaming the program. We have a couple that have risen to the top. We have not yet made a final decision, but the young people had a lot of good input. And one of the things I think that's really positive is we with all of these promotions and some of those that Chief Fletcher mentioned, we were able to identify a manager over this program who brought with her an assistant director, and they've been doing a really excellent job engaging the young men, talking with them a lot more, doing a lot of level setting, talking through expectations of the program, talking through what are some of the things that they want to see. So they have a list of incentives. That's kind of where most of the names for the program itself came from, was from the young men. So a list of incentives, things that they want us to build into the programming, some of the educational opportunities that they want to see. And even from a case management perspective, there's been a lot of positives there where some of the staff that have been assigned to this population as case managers have relationships with these young men from previous camps or stays with us, and so that's been a really positive thing. We've seen some settling, I think, in the population because of those relationships. Our assessment process is mostly finalized. So again, not to get too far in the weeds, but there's kind of a lengthy assessment process. Part of that is in statute, but part of it is also to inform a treatment plan. So we've worked really closely with our county partners and community partners to build something that we feel like is a really quality assessment. And that has also, we've been able to use that when we start thinking about how we're going to move the young people out to Kilpatrick and elsewhere. We have our community partners who are engaged in that process as well. One of the things that was an area of concern for us as we prepare for this move, we want to make sure that Kilpatrick has a program that's ready and prepared to receive the young men when they get there. We have commitments from Healing Dialogues in Action, ARC, and others to follow the young people from Barry J to Campus Kilpatrick, which is really positive. So they'll be able to continue to provide those mentoring and supportive services to our young people. Trying to think through the training curriculum is being finalized. Right now, we've identified about 120 hours of training. I think it's more than that, in fact, and we're looking for ways to infuse collaborative training as much as possible. So it wouldn't just be probation officers sitting in the training. We'd be training with some of these CBOs that we've mentioned who are working with our young men, as well as mental health education partners and our health partners, trying to get some of that shoulder-to-shoulder learning together, shared language, shared opportunities to discuss this new program and what it's going to look like moving forward. Because there's so many hours of training that we've identified, it'll probably be phased in over time. We're also looking at opportunities to have the CBOs themselves provide some of the training, as well as our county partners come in and provide some of the training around trauma-informed care and some of the things that we know our staff need and these young men need. So that's kind of the overall. Specifically, want to talk about Camp Scott. So Camp Scott, a couple of major things going on. So Probation, Public Works, and DLR, who's the architect, who's kind of, what they're doing is they're building a project plan. So the project plan is a proposal around renovations to this site. And specifically, we asked them to look at the living units. We asked them to look at the dining area, some of the office space, and the classroom space. The grounds themselves, for those of you who have been out there, are well maintained. Our staff do a really good job of keeping all of that up. So that part is ready, but I think there's consensus around the living unit needs something. Right now, it's just a large open dorm. We'd like to build some softer space in there for young people, as well as offices and living area for services and supports to be moved in there. The other thing that the architect has done, which is exciting, is built in some visiting space. It's just a better space. We really think we're on our way to building really transformative space. We think in another couple of weeks we'll have an actual project plan, and the plan will. So the steps, at least in my mind, how this will move is we'll get a draft project plan. That project plan will go to the JJRBG subcommittee. So we'll go to the subcommittee, do a presentation on the project plan. The board has asked probation to work with the subcommittee to finalize the proposed renovations. So that's how that flow will go. We can certainly share all of that with the commission once we have it. But it'll be sort of discussed in another public setting at the JJRBG, and then we'll get consensus around what the plan is. One wrinkle, and I don't want to get too much into this, but Santa Clarita has filed suit against the county. I think this is well known. It's been in the press. We're working with county council. County council's engaged outside counsel at this point to start talking through. If you ask me my opinion, I think it's premature. There is no plan for them to challenge at this point, but these are ongoing conversations that and we've had a lot of conversation at this point. Right now, everyone's trying to gather as much information as possible to see what this is and what sort of delays may come. There will be certainly some environmental impact to the renovations at Camp Scott. We don't know what those are. So part of the planning team that Public Works has pulled together includes an environmental consultant who will do some of the impact analysis, and then hopefully whatever plan we come together with a consultant on board will better stand up to challenge that's brought. So that's the Camp Scott piece. Specifically around Campus Kilpatrick, security enhancements are still underway. We have one cottage. We've discussed in a couple different spaces, anti-climbing mesh and roller bars. We do have a cottage that's ready to go. That work is done. The other cottages, we're running into supply chain issues like a lot of the county. So ISD, Internal Services Department, is actually leading that work. The good news is we've had very high level meetings with their executive team to let them know what some of our priorities are. And this bleeds into some of the other things that we're working with the DOJ and some of the things that Chief Fletcher just mentioned. ISD is kind of the department that is going to do a lot of that work. And so we just want to let them know, here's what our priorities are. And they're committed to making those their priorities as well, which is really encouraging. But we do have supply chain issues, right? As everybody's well aware of. And so some of the items that we're waiting on, some of the roller bars and things like that. We do believe, though, the conversations that we have internally are about what of these things are actual deal breakers, right? Would they preclude us from movement in any way? And I think because we're planning this phased approach, we think that we should be ready to move in once we can navigate some of the other challenges. So I'll stop. I know I've said a lot. Happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Thank you, Mr. Bettino. Wendy, do we have any written or live public comments for this item?
We do. The written public comments will be included on the agenda. Please feel free to email them in. I have a couple of people pre-registered who I don't see on the list of participants. So if you are a call-in user and you have pre-registered, please dial *3 on your phone, and that will put you in the list so that we can tell what your that you would like to make a public comment. We're going to start with Marcia McLean. Marcia, we're setting up the timer, and you can begin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Councilwoman Marcia McLean, and I was here mostly to listen to what you had to say. And I just want to reiterate that we in Santa Clarita care very deeply about our youth and making sure they don't get into the system. We fund many, many programs. And I'm also here to say that Camp Scott is simply not an appropriate site as much as you would like to think it is. Your own county experts have said it is the least viable site of those studies. It is directly across the street from residential neighborhoods and schools, and it is nowhere near any transportation hub. So visitors and your employees out there are going to have a hard time getting out there without having to travel for long distances. Adequate security is just about near impossible. So I guess what I'm requesting for you is to make sure your plan, your draft project plan, includes evacuation during a fire and or flood. We've had both in that area. And if you care about the safety of your young people that you plan to house out there, I would suggest you do that. We have filed suit for very, very good reasons. And if construction starts out there, there will be further things that will be happening, like an injunction to stop your construction until the safety of those people you want to put out there is fully addressed. So thank you very much. I hope you'll take my comments into consideration.
Thank you. So again, I'll say if you're calling in, we have Teresa Bosarge and Ryan Delborn on our list as pre-registered, but don't see you on the participant list, so I can't unmute you. If you're calling in and want to make a comment, please dial *3 on your phone. We'll go next to Jesse LC. Jesse, you're unmuted and can begin.
Hi, hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Great. I had a couple of questions regarding Camp Scott and if there's any plans to include the residents that live in that community in some type of a town hall. The residents that live in that community are just yards away from Camp Scott, and there's some concerns that they have that you guys aren't addressing. And if the approach with these guys is a whole community approach in reimagining justice, why would you not include the community and have the community and the residents that live in that area also participate in that process? So those are a couple of the concerns that I have regarding your plans, because there seems to be a lack of transparency with a lot of this. I think you're leaving out a very viable source. It seems like you guys are using the residents that are in the facility, but you're leaving out the very residents that are going to be impacted most. So if you could start addressing some of those concerns, would you guys be open to a town hall?
Thank you, Jesse. Next up, we have Thomas Bell. Thomas, we'll unmute you and you can begin.
Hey, thank you for having me again. Just with the Scott movement, I do hope, with the curriculum construction that you are taking what the public's saying seriously as far as the safety. I live in Santa Clarita as well, so I'm concerned about the safety issues as well. And for some of the people calling, I think if you listen to the Board of Supervisor meeting a few weeks ago, you already heard Sheila Kill make the comment that she does not care what the public thinks about the situation. So that's going to be a little hard to convince them to change their mind about it. The only thing we could do right now is just hope you guys really look into the safety of the situation and make some changes as you do your construction and make sure it's just safe and secure so the people that live in that area won't live in fear. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Carrillo, that is all the public comment we have today.
Thank you, Wendy. Commissioners, same as before, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Any questions? I guess I'll start with the question, Mr. Bettino. So we were out at Campus Kilpatrick a few weeks ago, And one of the questions that came up is that the existing boys who were there were I guess the loose plan was to relocate them to other camps throughout the county. Is there an opportunity or even a conversation about, for those who are maybe have days, weeks, months to go for their sentences, that they can just be released back into the community and return home? Since we're talking about all this, pairing that with the move from Central to Sylmar and all the trauma involved with moving children from one institution to another, and finding ways to alleviate any unnecessary, trauma, I suppose is the right word. Is there a mechanism that we can either trigger or look into about getting early releases for those who are still at Campus Kilpatrick?
Thanks for the question, Chair Carrillo. So it is something that we're discussing internally about the best path forward. We have stopped intake at Campus Kilpatrick, so there'll be no new camp youth arriving, and we've taken a close look at each individual sentence, even down to whether or not some of our bench officers have requested Campus Kilpatrick specifically. I think we're in good shape there, and we actually have been looking very closely about which of those young people can be released home, rather than trying to integrate them in another setting. Trying to think through how to do that in the best phased way possible, right? So anytime there's, you move one population and integrate them elsewhere, it's potentially disruptive. So we're thinking through all of those the options that we may have for this population. We would love to keep them together in some form or fashion, rather than trying to scatter them or spread them out amongst the other camps. We're still thinking through that.
Okay. Commissioner Dupuy?
Hi, thank you. I had a question about the phased training for staff at the secure track sites. And I'm wondering, I know you mentioned that you've identified a lot of training would be ongoing, but has that list been like delineated between what's mandatory to take place prior to like the transition to Kilpatrick, or what is kind of like an ongoing thing, or if there is even that kind of delineation? And then I guess on top of that, like, will that cause additional delays than are already in place based on like some of the supply chain backup and, obviously the labor communications?
So the plan as it stands now is to get some things finalized. We're actually going through that delineation process now that you described really well. So figuring out, okay, what are the things that we feel like are bare bones essential, and then what are the things that we can continue to build upon. You get into something that was discussed, I think, in the last conversation around morale and what are some of the tools that we're giving our folks. And I'll own this, I think, as much as I can. I think our department historically has not done a great job of ongoing training that builds on itself, if that makes sense. So we do a lot of one-shot stuff. We do a lot of box checking when it comes to some of these topics. When you're talking about building a trauma-informed staff or program, these are things that have to go, it has to be embedded in what we do, and it has to be brought to our folks over and over and over. So that certainly is the vision for how we will build out the staffing plan, or the training plan specifically, is to sort out, okay, what are the things we can give to folks that are more skill-based, and then what are the things that we feel like they're going to need a little bit more deeply to be effective working with this population, or any of our young people, to be totally honest. So there's things like motivational interviewing that's in the curriculum. That's something you can't just do that once, right? That's something that you have to do over and over and over. And some of the therapeutic components as well, it has to start to become embedded, and it has to be repetitive. The plan as it stands, I think the second or third part of your question is about the delays, and we don't plan to have the training be part of the delay. We think that the folks, again, we're talking about a small number of young people who we've been working with. And so we don't want the training part. We don't want folks to feel like, well, I have to have this training before I do this, because we're already providing services and supports to these young people. So it's something that will go along with the move. We'll be training as we go, which is unfortunate. I think we'd love everybody trained and everything ready to go and then put the first young person there. But as it stands, I don't think we have the luxury of doing that.
No, yeah, that's really important. And I think, you know, I don't know, I know staff are currently working with those young people and may have forged good relationships. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would be able to go to Kilpatrick with them, but I did have the opportunity to speak to some staff at Kilpatrick who already have, I think, different levels of training than maybe at some of the other sites. And what their, you know, openness is to being part of a staff that worked with young people that were in the secure track, and they actually said they would be open to it, you know, given that their experience and given their existing training, but that they would want additional training for an older age group. Obviously, working with younger folks is different than working with a bit older young people, and then appropriate compensation, you know, and it seemed like for them, you know, talking, I mean, they were talking to me, but for them, it was like kind of an easy fix, you know, if there was any question or apprehension about staff being willing to work with the number of young people. So I just encourage us to think through that and like make sure to, I know Chief Deputy Fletcher was mentioning like focus groups around just general needs of staff, but even like some of those questions that may need to be answered, I think focus groups would be great too, because I think there is an underutilization of staff perspectives in a lot of the decision making. So just want to encourage us to continue to go to directly like to staff.
I'm going to piggyback off of that, of Commissioner Dupuy's comment here, you know, and I'm going to call out on Director Bay, who we met at Campus Kilpatrick. And you would be doing me a huge favor, Adam, if you would involve her directly. She seems to be very knowledgeable on all the operations there at Campus Kilpatrick. And I know those other staff were really excited, but also just, you know, in the blind about what's going to happen next. And so I want to echo my colleagues here's sentiments about these issues. And I just really felt that it was unfortunate that someone who was there, who was assigned to that camp, hadn't been called to the table to share insights about, you know, things that she maybe as a director knows versus people back at headquarters, you know, so it would be very helpful. Any other commissioners? Okay, Mr. Bettino, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6. We will discuss and take appropriate action on progress the Los Angeles County Probation Department has made towards implementing the LA model pursuant to September 21st, 2021 Board of Supervisors motion regarding reaffirming and expanding the LA model. We'll first hear from our Executive Director, Wendy Julian, followed by representatives from the Probation Department if they have anything to add. Wendy, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. I requested this item remain on the agenda mostly to keep us honest as the Probation Oversight Commission in terms of our role with the board motion around reaffirming and enhancing the LA model. Of course, many things have changed. That's why we put it here on the agenda, because we just talked about a couple of the major things changing since that motion was passed. And what I have found is that I think there is broad agreement among the supervisors' offices, probation staff, the advocates around the future of the LA model. And it is, as I initially expected and have found is agreed upon, that the concept of the LA model was in fact as a model at Campus Kilpatrick that would then be extended to the other facilities around the county. That it wasn't the idea that it would be limited to Campus Kilpatrick. So there are lots of questions that remain about the future of the LA model. In the recent motion where Campus Kilpatrick and Camp Scott were selected as the permanent secure track sites, there was an amendment to the motion by Supervisor Solis's office to name Camps Page and Afflerbach in the east side of the county as the LA model camps. And in speaking with Probation and with Supervisor Barger, in whom those camps are located, there, I think, is broad agreement that it would be a great idea and a good path forward to begin to implement both pieces of the LA model as they are simply implemented, and also the full comprehensive LA model as we can move forward with the training. So it is my intent, in terms of the Probation Oversight Commission's role, to continue to actively work with probation leadership at each of the campsites, as well as in Downey, about ensuring that the remaining camps are implementing the LA model conceptually and doing the training, and also that it just becomes the norm for the young people who are being provided that service. I will say that I had a great conversation last week with Mr. Banuelos, who Chief Fletcher mentioned, who was the director at Campus Kilpatrick for a while, about some of the challenges around implementation of the LA model at an older structured camp like Page and Afflerbach, where you have dormitory style residences, and just, you don't have the beautiful new cottage type campus as you do it at Campus Kilpatrick. So there are so many things up in the air about how that implementation will look, but we will certainly continue to be providing support and reports back to the board on that implementation. So Deputy Chiefs Fletcher or Bettino, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Thank you, Ms. Julian. Absolutely, we agree that the LA model needs to be implemented. I think certainly our goal, and Mr. Bettino and I have talked about this many times, the delivery of service and the continuum of care is the most important thing that we need to focus on. Whether a youth is with us for a day or 2 days, or remains with us for a period of time into the secure youth track model, we need to make sure that we have services in place that address the needs, even if it is for a very short time. And we hope it is for a short time and our youth get released. So we are looking at ways that we can implement that LA model across the board. So we do have real strong experts in that area with Mr. Banuelos and Ms. Bay, and they certainly will help us move that forward so that every institution is benefiting from that programming.
That's all we've got. And Chair Carrillo, I don't see any public comment on this issue. Jesse, you still have your hand raised, but I'm guessing that's from the last item. We'll go ahead and unmute Jesse just to make sure. Did you want to make a comment on this item, Jesse?
No, it was from the last time my hand was raised.
Okay, thank you. So no public comment on this item, Chair Carrillo.
Thank you for that update, Wendy. Commissioners, any hands for any questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Wendy. And we will move on to item number 7. Item number 7, our Executive Director, Wendy Julian, will report on the POC's progress towards completing its 2022 strategic goals outlined in the POC's 2022 strategic operating plan, including updates on the 56-hour work week research, facility inspections, girls decarceration, and the elimination of OC spray. Wendy?
Thank you. And I will be brief about these things, but I also want to ensure that you all are able to ask questions about them publicly, and that the members of the public and our probation folks who are attending the call can hear what we're working on. So as far as the 56-hour work week, we were asked by a couple of supervisors' offices, as well as by this commission, to do a research project about the history, benefits, challenges, and concerns related to this compressed schedule. The 56-hour work week means that you work 3 days out of the 7 and sleep on site. So Dr. Gongora, who is our project director for data and research has, with support from Dr. Reynoso, conducted over 70 interviews of mostly probation staff, but also partner staff. And she's contacted over 30 other jurisdictions, completed academic and other research about the schedule's challenges and benefits. She is now in the final stages of writing the report. We will be sharing the report first with probation to get their input, and then publishing and reporting on the findings and recommendations. I can share with you that this has been a really overwhelmingly positive experience for the Probation Oversight Commission, both because the probation department themselves offered what I think can be called unfettered access to employees to be able to talk to them. And there was so much interest in having those conversations, and it seemed very little concern about folks being concerned about retaliation for speaking their truth. So I think we got some open and honest information from folks, and we'll be able to present that. There are a lot of interesting themes that will come out, and I won't steal any of Sarah's thunder because it's going to be a great report. Although I think what you'll find is that many of the recommendations in the PRIT and the things in our operating plan come through in the comments from staff and partners, and show that there are very significant opportunities for cultural change within the department, and also quite a bit of optimism and great ideas from staff. So we look forward to sharing that report soon. As far as data goes, Commissioners Yamashiro and Dupuy represent the data subcommittee for the group and have been working through what is, I think I can say, honestly, been a very frustrating experience in terms of getting a significant amount of data from the department. The department has been very responsive on our one-off requests, our individual requests that this commission makes, and requesting information on incidents that have happened and other items that the department has informed us of or that we've learned of in other ways. What is significantly more challenging is the overarching data requests, thinking about looking at and using data in a broad scale for being able to do research and measure outcomes. And much of that, Chief Gonzalez has said, quite frankly, in many of our meetings, relates to antiquated data systems within the probation department, as well as just concerns about how that data is being used. So we are continuing to push forward. We actually are in conversations about a memorandum of understanding with the department about sharing information. As you all know, there's been some progress in terms of the department sharing what's called the ProbeStat data, which is regular updates from each of the different bureaus within the department. There's a recent report on juvenile that's attached to this week's agenda, so I encourage you to take a look at it. It's full of very important demographic and outcome-related information. We are still awaiting the status of probation's public-facing data dashboard. There are some board-related requirements coming up soon around the sharing of that data in a public-facing data dashboard and to the county's open data portal. We are working with probation leadership, who is hopefully will be sharing that information with us shortly. With respect to inspections, this is perhaps the Probation Oversight Commission's most important role in terms of being eyes and ears to help support the health and well-being of our young people who are incarcerated. We are required to do annual inspections under Title 15 in the regulations of Title 15. And the POC this year, as you heard, conducted 2 pre-inspections of Central Juvenile Hall and Campus Kilpatrick because of the timeliness of issues going on there. Those results have been shared with probation and will be published at our next POC meeting on May 26th. And then we'll begin the official annual 2022 inspections of each of the open facilities at the end of this month. As per the board's request, we will, once each inspection is complete, share the findings with probation quickly, rather than waiting until the end of the year to share all of the findings. We also will, of course, share any immediate health and welfare concerns immediately with the department. And all of those inspections will then be reported on, probation will respond, and then we'll submit them to the board and the BSCC by the end of the year. So each facility inspection this year is going to include a new quality assurance component, which requires commissioners to audit the programs that will be listed on the facility's calendar during their inspection. So the POC has asked the probation department to provide those monthly program calendars. Leadership has agreed to provide the calendars before the inspections start, and then commissioners will be able to determine whether that programming is in fact being offered when they are at the facility. Those dates of the inspections are made available to the probation department. They're not surprise inspections. However, they are inspections in which there are a lot of questions and a lot of things that the commissioners go through to be able to report on. The OC spray report for March and April is attached to the agenda. And I encourage you to take a look at it. As I think one of the commissioners mentioned earlier today, you can see, I believe it was Commissioner Garcia-Lays, there has been a sharp increase over the last year of OC spray use. And I think in looking at the reports over the last few months, Commissioner Garcia-Lays is correct to state that there is a higher use at Central than at Barry J. Neidorf. So that obviously has changed in the last 6 weeks since the move, but we'll continue to look at that. And it certainly is the role of the Probation Oversight Commission to attempt to enforce the board's recommendation about the phase out of the board's motion about the phase out of OC spray. And we look forward, once things have settled down, to begin to see those numbers drop drastically. I don't have much to report on the decarceration of girls issue. There will be a report back that's coming from the Youth Justice Work Group very shortly. And Luis Rodriguez over at the Public Defender's Office has been actively in communication with me and the Board of Supervisors offices around the transitional multidisciplinary teams meetings, the TMDTs, they call them, which are looking at options for release, community placement, home placement for the girls who are currently incarcerated. So we're pleased to hear about the phase 1 move of the girls back to Central, and hope that that really is able to contribute to the goals of decarceration within that motion. So that is the extent of my report for this meeting, and thank you for giving me that time, Chair Carrillo.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'll call you on, is there any written or live public comment to this item?
I don't see any written public comment. I see Eduardo Mundo's hand, and we'll put up the timer and unmute you, Eduardo, so you can speak. You can go ahead.
Everybody. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually. I just wanted to say, wow, the information that was provided in that report from probation, it's great. It really reflects what the department is doing, and gives somebody like me, who's a data freak, an opportunity to process, and I'm really appreciative of it. I hope that everybody on this call gets a chance to really look at that and appreciate how transparent the department was with this report. And those who work for the YDD and who are building their data, this individualized breakdown of area offices would serve them well to do that with their agencies and their CBOs. So we can really take a look at what they're doing to support the kids that are being diverted. Again, Chief Gonzalez and everybody who was involved, Felicia Cotton, this is an amazing report. It's going to take me a couple days to process, but what I'm seeing now, I really like. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. I think I can say from our team that we fully agree with you in terms of how much information is available in that ProbeStat report. And we are working on ways to make sure that that information continues to be shared in usable formats with the public, both with the information office for the county, the open data portal, and making sure that the probation's open data dashboard for the public allows for that information to be shared, because you're right, it is there, and it's very helpful to be able to see what's going on in those in the departments as we make analyses of best practices. That's all the public comment on that item, Chair Carrillo. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Commissioners, Any comments, questions on this item?
No, no real comments. I would just compliment our staff for all of the impressive work that they're doing behind the scenes, and fellow commissioners, all the work that we're doing overall to accomplish our strategic goals for this year. Yeah, I've just been happy with the process. So thank you all.
Ditto to that, and we will move on to item number 8. Okay, item number 8, are there any matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or to place on a future meeting agenda for action? Commissioners, any comments or questions? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on. Okay, moving on. Item number 9. Agenda item number 9 is an invitation for members of the public to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Wendy, please facilitate public comments for us, please.
I will be happy to. We do have a couple of hands raised, and I don't think, Janae, that we had anyone pre-registered. Is that correct?
There were a few. I'll send you the list now, Wendy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's start with, I can't see this now, call-in user. Let's see if I can pull up your number. It's call-in user number 13. That's why I can't see your numbers. It's anonymous. We're going to unmute you and you can begin.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Julian, and apologies for the block number. This is Mel Bailey. I'm a community advocate and activist in District 2. I just have one question, or statement for consideration that I've mentioned before. There was a lot of very fruitful information that was given today and very robust conversations. I only ask that we take into consideration including the courts in these conversations. They have a huge part of this. I've known that some court officials have visited sites to make their determinations, at least so they can know where they're sending someone. And I'll still always ask for the victims or survivors to be included, and not the survivors, victims who are just as involved. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. And Eduardo, did you want to make a second public comment on general public comment?
No, I'm sorry. I forgot to lower my hand.
No problem. Next up, we have Thomas Bell. You're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the items that was not on this agenda, just wanted to, I don't know if you guys knew, but Alpha Ball actually received 100% in their BSCC evaluation. Just to spread some good news. I know we heard about Central failing and all these other places failing, so I just wanted to let you know, hey, somebody's actually doing their job as well. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Bell. Next up, we have Sarah Clifton.
I just want to add to my comment earlier about the citation diversion program that, similar to Attorney Zidor Dawes, I've had similar issues. I had a bunch of clients who had hearings on, I believe it was March 4th, and it took several weeks, almost a month, for some of their actual license holds to be cleared at the DMV. I do let the clients know that there is a certain amount of time. The court generally says it could be up to 10 business days. So 2 weeks after their hearing, the hold should be cleared from their licenses, but for a lot of the clients, they're not. And for a few of them, I had to follow up several times with the citation diversion program to ensure that even though the dismissals were done in a hearing on the record, that in fact that information had been processed and sent over to the DMV. I had one client who I believe it was it was definitely at least 3, but maybe 4 times that he went to the DMV before he was actually able to get his license. The first few times he went, he was told that he still had holds on his license, and he had more than 1 ticket. So I think even that was a problem where maybe some of the holds were removed, but not all of them. And without all of them being removed, he could not get his license. And I am concerned for those that have not been able to get their licenses yet, that if they have issues, it is going to be more difficult to follow up as this transition period is going on and things are in limbo. So I just want to make clear to the commission that there's a difference between the actual dismissal of the ticket and then the actual removal of the hold. And sometimes it's a really big lag in between the two. And without the second part being done, the youth are still in that bad position, just as Attorney Zidor said earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jennifer Simpson. Jennifer, you can begin. Except we can't hear you. So I'm not sure. Janae, is Jennifer unmuted?
Yes, she's unmuted.
Jennifer, can you hear us? Okay, let's go back to Marcia McLean.
Hi, yeah, I spoke earlier, so I don't need to speak again. It's just, you know, Camp Scott's not a done deal, and I hope you guys realize that. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final commenter today, unless anyone else wants to raise their hand, will be Jesse LC. Jesse, we will unmute you and you can begin.
And I agree with Marcia that Camp Scott isn't a done deal. And I hope that you guys do realize that there is going to be a significant amount of community pushback. I think that you guys have a duty and a responsibility to hear our public concerns. We live in these houses knowing that Camp Scott exists next door, but we live here knowing that it's for low-level offenders. Choosing to put 707 be offenders, murderers, and violent criminals across the street is irresponsible if you're not going to ask the community how they feel about it and absorb their ideas into your plans. So we have concerns about a school bus stop being at that location. Resident safety in general, there's lots of concerns around that. I haven't heard anybody start to address those concerns. There's parking for visitors. Where are they going to park? On the street? I hear you talking about building a visiting center, but that won't keep these people from parking on our streets. There's going to be an increased amount of traffic. They're building 300 new homes right next door. It is in a flood and a fire zone. So are those things going to be something that you're going to include the community in on addressing? Because I do think it is the responsibility of you guys to hear the community out and to understand that we are part of this too. If you are including these violent offenders across the street from us, this is not what we signed on for. And we need more discussion about how to make this work for everybody and not just how we're going to make it work for a select few group of people and for you guys.
Thank you. We'll go next to Oscar Canales. Oscar, you can begin.
Hello, my name is Oscar. First off and foremost, I would love to thank the Probation Oversight Commission for holding this space, and I want to thank the public for coming and addressing their concerns and their issues. And I will also love to uplift that I feel that we should include the dietary inclusion of these youth on what they eat and what are they taking in. I would love to uplift to be able to change the diet into a vegan lifestyle for these youth. The reason I would love to uplift this is because I'm learning through data and through research that vegan foods are rich in nutrients your body needs. Eating vegan helps reduce risk of cancer, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. A vegan diet can lower blood sugar levels and improve kidney function. Vegan foods have more essential dietary fiber. Eating vegan can help lose excessive weight, and vegan food can boost your mood. The reason I bring this up is because it was mentioned in other meetings is that youth have found maggots and other unwanted things in their meals, and we really care about the food. I feel like the food, that we really care about the youth. I feel that the food should be a key component in what the youth observed. Another thing is I would love to thank um, all the probation staff and all the public for showing up. You know, it shows that we really care and we really want to work and collaborate together to make a real change for the youth. And yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for this public space. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. And next up we have Krista Nooble. Krista, you can begin.
Okay, can you hear me? I just wanted to address the Camp Scott comments. And my only comment in regards to that is from 1958 to May 2020, it was okay for these kids to be at Camp Scott. Camp Scott wasn't an issue. And then in November 2020, Santa Clarita, the board approves this 300 house project with this whole rec center and open hiking grounds and everything else, because in May 2020, Camp Scott closed. Well, after they approved that, then, you know, the governor realigns these divisions and we're getting our kids back and everything is now in an uproar because they have this money contracted for these buildings. But I wanted to say to these people that are calling in, almost all the camps are near homes. Almost all the camps are near some kind of school. Camp Scott has existed since 1958. Just because a person doesn't show the crime they were initially charged with doesn't mean that you didn't have kids that were already there with 707B offenses. No one knows what's really in their backyard. It's up to us to contain them, try to redirect them, and give them a better path, period. So regardless whether 770B or low level, they're still kids, they're still youth, they still need help. And that camp existed for all these years without issue. There was still a flood zone from 1958 to May 2020. There was still no transportation there, but staff still got there without a problem. They were still spending the night there. They were still providing services. Those kids still got visitors. There weren't any parking issues there. And if they're going to expand it, they expand it or create other parking places for them to be. But what they're bringing up, we already dealt with those issues, and it's going to be okay.
Thank you, Krista. And Chair Carrillo, that's the end of our public comment for today.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, final item is just for me to thank you for all your comments. And as a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media at LA County POC and visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email listings. It is now 1:59 p.m. and I join this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.